This is the Bluff Town Council meeting. This is Tuesday, April 11th, 2023. It's 6:00 p.m. Roll call.
Linda Sosa.
Jim Sayers.
Luanne Hook.
Brant Murray.
Ann Leppanen.
Erin Nelson serving as town manager.
So the first agenda item is approval of the Town of Bluff's regular meeting minutes from April 4th, 2023. Has everybody read them? And are there any changes, corrections, modifications?
Hearing none, Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve those as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then it's unanimous. Public comment, there will be a 3-minute time limit for each person wishing to comment. If you exceed the 3-minute time limit without permission, the meeting controller will mute you. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment? And if so, let us know. I'll wait a few more seconds and see if anybody jumps on or raises their hand. Well, seeing no hands raised or hearing anything, we'll move on to number 1. Status reports on committee meetings, and the first one would be Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on April 5th, 2023. And Lou, were you in on that?
Yeah, I've got it's a pretty short update, but I can do that. The first thing they did was welcomed Brian Whitney as a new commissioner to the Planning and Zoning, which was great. Great to have him step up. He's moved here permanently now, permanent resident. So that was good. And then they thanked Melissa Eggy for all of her service over these years. And we're sad to see her go, but it was a nice thing because she hung on until Brian was available. So she's been working right up. She was on this last meeting. They discussed the unpermitted sign in Cow Canyon. They did not have a permit for that, and there wasn't much discussion other than it exists and that want to get the word out that there is a permitting system for signs in Bluff. There weren't any new land use clearances. Sandy Maillard is the new owner of what was the Turquoise, San Juan River Kitchen, and so on. It's now the Canyon Smokehouse at the restaurant part, and she owns the whole thing and came to the commission to see what she could do, how it was zoned, options and that kind of thing. So it was just an informational thing for her that she tossed out some ideas of what she wanted to do, and they sort of said yay or nay to her options. One thing she wanted to do was divide it, and in our ordinance, in commercial zones, you can only go down to 3/4 of an acre. And in residential, I think it might be a little higher, but in commercial, you can't leave anything smaller than 0.75 acres. So it will stay a unit. It's a little less than an acre. And then they started studying the RV ordinance from other towns. They have a draft done that they will start critiquing and throwing arrows at and whatever. So that will be on their work list. And then they postponed the zoning project for renewable energy site just because of all the other projects in the queue right now. So, and that was what I had. Erin was there as well. So anything else?
That sums it up. Thanks, Lou.
Okay. Anybody have questions?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thanks, Luke.
Yeah, you're welcome. They're a good team.
It's nice to have a relief now for Melissa and for her to be able to plan the rest of her life without having to be in the wings. Next is the Cooperative Cultural Center Design Review Committee meeting. And Jim, That's on the agenda because we thought we'd have it and it was canceled today, correct?
Correct. There's just the workload of the DRC over the last couple of weeks has been very productive and kind of strenuous, and I didn't really see anything before us that it was in need of to be addressed. So I canceled, and I didn't hear any lamentations anywhere. So I think it's okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
we got mowed over there today, so when you guys go by and look at it, I think he's going to finish up tomorrow. So the mowing project at the BCC, the CCC, was almost completed today.
Oh, good. Well, thank you, Brant.
Yeah, that'll look nice. Thank you.
Then moving to the strategic planning. Erin, do you want to take a few minutes here?
Sure. So strategic planning has been going on since like November. We have 3 work groups. We have livability, sustainable local government, and mindful growth. Each of them are rounding out their drafted plans. These like I said, they're drafted plans. We definitely foresee some additional conversation and discussion about, where the plan will go during the all-day work session on Thursday, April 27th from 10 a.m. to 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. 10 to 5 on Thursday the 27th. And we are inviting back the folks who were involved in the first all-day work session. And certainly expect some pretty good conversations, but each of the 3 groups have been tasked with some very specific deliverables, including the narrative for the actual plan. So if you go and look at other communities, other towns and cities, there's a physical document that is their strategic plan. So we're tasked with kind of pulling that together as a draft. And then we're also each putting together a presentation, which is what's going to be taken to that April 27th meeting. And so all of these deliverables are due to the strategic planners by Monday, the 17th. So kind of our last little push, last little leg for all 3 groups. I know the 2 groups that I am helping oversee will meet that deadline. And I know the livability group is also working really hard to get all of their materials together. So it's been a great process. And I do want to just reiterate to the community again, certainly your feedback from the surveys, from the town halls, all of that information is being considered. So, it's definitely a very holistic process, and we look forward to this next iteration after the all-day work session. Questions, comments?
Good job, y'all.
Thank you.
I think the only comment I'd like to make is that we're really working hard at making this document something that doesn't just go into the file room and stay there. Something that we actually use and that has some short-term, long-term outcomes and processes. So I'm really happy with how it's coming together. And I'd encourage everyone who gets invited to please show up and give more feedback. It's really important. Anyone else? Okay, then moving to the update on the solar eclipse committees. Erin's been working on those. I've been doing some work on the human needs. Jim, are you talking to us or you? Okay, never mind. Erin, do you want to cover kind of where we are with the solar eclipse committees?
Yeah, so I'll do a brief update. Our last meeting was on April 5th. We have another one next week on April 19th. During the last meeting, the Human Needs Subcommittee presented out on all kinds of good things, including parking, food availability, human waste, other waste and trash. And it really was a really good capture of a lot of the concerns that we've heard in other communities, and that we've heard feedback from the community that we understand that residents are concerned about the environmental impacts and social impacts as if we have this many visitors. So we're really getting ahead and making sure that we have some great plans. We had a brief discussion from the communications subcommittee who presented the meeting previously, and they'll start getting their materials out here, I would think within the month of April. Again, we have very specific information for visitors as well as the visited. And so you can expect to see some of those resources available on the Business Owners of Bluff website. And I know, we'll certainly be getting more questions and more comments as we get closer to this event. But the twice per month meetings have been very beneficial to just making sure that we're capturing all the concerns. We have had active participation from a representative from the BLM for each meeting. So that's been really promising to get their input and understand what their plans are. And like I said, the Human Needs Committee, it was really great to hear that they've addressed so many facets of the concerns that have been brought to our attention. And did you have any specifics you wanted to share?
No, one of the things that did come up that Human Needs had not addressed and was pointed out is people who bring their animals and getting that message into the communication piece. Like if you're coming to the eclipse, think about leaving your dog at home. And if you bring your dog, bring adequate water, food, a leash, medicine, those kinds of things. And so I've invited Bark representative to join us at one of the meetings, because Bark raised the issue of these any kind of occurrence or event tend to lead to some folks bringing animals and abandoning them in the area. And so Bark wants to have a plan to how they're going to be able to deal with anything that's any animal left behind. And so that we're adding that to the Human Needs and then in the communication piece.
Mayor?
Yes.
I was just thinking about airport management during that eclipse. Erin, I'll talk to Jim Hook, and I'm sure we'll have a plan about how many we can accommodate and that sort of thing. It's just something that just popped into my mind.
Yeah, we are addressing that piece of it, in particular because we may need that pad, and so there's a lot of ideas about perhaps closing off that road to the public so that people can't just go down.
Mayor, be sure and include me in that conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely, Jim. Absolutely. So, anything else on that issue? All right, then moving to the Dark Skies Committee. Last meeting, Lou had some suggestions and Brant had some suggestions, and we do need to form a committee. The $250 application fee has been paid. And so not only do we have our designated person, but we have the money in the bank to begin looking at the committee and holding a kickoff meeting and deciding how much or how little of the work can the committee do versus hiring a consultant. So what do people think the best way would be to form the committee?
My thought is a sort of a small advisory committee and hire John to do most of the work, since we're so busy doing so many projects.
And my suggestion was to send out that article that I forwarded from Adam had sent it out from KSL that was talking about the support that Utah has given the dark sky ordinances across the state, all the towns that are working on it and all the parks and things. So April is set aside as the Dark Sky Month in Utah. And so I was hoping to send that out to our list of people and saying, hey, look, this is what we're working on. We're part of this whole effort. We have Utah's support. We have the community. We've got the business owners. And then say that we're going to be forming a committee and let us know who's interested. And when we get that vote of interest, we can form a committee and move on. But it seems perfect right now to send that out. And I didn't know what our protocol is for if I can send it, if I can request Lois to send it out. It seemed like we ought to decide that jointly. But it seemed like a great article. It had a lot of applicable things for Utah and for us and from the IDA, talking about Moab. Theirs goes into effect at the end of 24. So there's just a lot of information in there that I think people would appreciate seeing and clear up some of the questions on the whole thing prior to making a committee.
So if the idea is that we're going to send out an article is going to go out and we're going to do it in conjunction with saying we're opening up the opportunity for people being on the committee, then that should come through the town website and not through Lois's, which is more social and community-based events. So Linda, do you still have that link or that article?
Yeah, I'm sure it's still in my email.
So why don't we get that out, and I'll write something short and sweet asking people to please let us know if they're interested in the committee, and then leave it out there for 2 weeks and then open it up back up to form a committee.
What will the committee guys be doing?
Well, that's a good question. I think looking at the list of what needs to be done and making a decision, what should be advisory, what should be looked at by a consultant, what have we already done, which is a lot of it we've already done.
And I see it as sort of working like the Active Transportation Committee, because we've got Chris Wiltsey is doing the plan, but it becomes kind of the focus group to advise and work with them instead of it just being one person saying what Bluff wants to do and what Bluff's already done. You have a group that they can come and figure out what needs to happen, and he can meet with us and then assign tasks and assign projects and find, if we need to look up information or whatever. It's just, I think it could operate a lot like that group's doing.
Jim, you're muted.
Muted me. Excuse me. The livability group is looking at dark skies as part of what we're doing, and it sounds like very similar to the CCC and very similar to the active transportation, which I've, there was some discussion about what we should be doing in strategic planning with regard to these initiatives. And I kind of am of the opinion that they are taking on a life of their own. And as such, they're sort of automatic priorities and not really something that strategic planning has to do more than articulate. Am I wrong in that? These are already town committees, and I just don't see how they would be anything less than priorities.
Well, to the extent that we already have oversight over those committees, right, they would be priorities.
Okay.
They take on the life of their own in terms of advisory, but the decision making and finalization obviously falls with us. But yeah,
Of course.
and I think the part of the discussion is when we get some people interested is, are we hiring a consultant or not? I mean, we've kind of gone both ways. I've been 100% at all times. We need to just hire a consultant so we can get it done.
That's the way I am.
And there's been some discussion, well, we could do a lot of it ourselves. And I think that's what when we get some interested people, we wait 2 weeks and then say, okay, are we hiring a consultant or not? Is this committee doing the work, or are we hiring a consultant?
Good. 2 weeks, we'll make a decision.
Linda?
One thing that a consultant can do is tell us what things we don't need to do. I mean, they can pinpoint what they do and what we need to do. And since this is going to take several years, possibly, I'm basically in favor of the consultant. With the
other thing a consultant could do is fill in the blank in terms of ownership in the strategic plan, and also cost. When you talk about ownership and you're not going to have a consultant or a project director or someone who actually is you're planning on, you're kind of struggling with who's actually going to do this. And I think that would be a struggle for the council in any event if we decide not to hire a consultant. I mean, who is really going to take the ball and run with it? So that would solve a couple of problems for the strategic planning livability group to also. Thank you.
Mayor, look, the other thing I was thinking about the reason for a consultant, and I'm going to kind of stay on this a little bit. Notices of violation come from an independent party. It's not coming from your neighbor or from council. And I think that's a nice way to try to get some of the non-compliant stuff complied. So I'll stop right there, but I'm for the consultant.
Okay, am I putting that on the first meeting of May then? Since next week would be too early and that's our last planned meeting.
Thank you. That seems like a good plan.
Okay, good. Linda, just let me know if you have any trouble finding the KSL attachment or whatever it is, and I'll look at my stuff and pull it up.
Okay.
Then, okay, so number 2, we should have a drum roll. We should have champagne, update on the Inflation Act grant. Erin, I am going to turn this over to you.
I got a drum roll going.
All right. Well, thank you for that very pressure-filled introduction. So we did submit, and I say I clicked send on the Environmental Justice Government to Government grant. The grant is nationwide, they're looking for 70 applicants who would each receive $1 million towards promoting environmental justice in their communities. So Drew and the entire DRC committee worked very hard on getting Drew Cooper, big thanks to Drew Cooper for writing so much of this narrative. He did a fantastic job tying in, really the communities and how these partnerships will work together. But we submitted the application this afternoon after a little bit of fighting with grants.gov, just a little bit. But we were able to get in. In total, we did take the entire 18-page document that we were allowed. So that is an 18-page, mostly single-space document with a couple pictures thrown in just to make it jazzy. We submitted a budget proposal, which indicates that we would be spending some of the funding on a project manager to help us oversee the building, on asbestos testing and mitigation, on some of the major systems, think like HVAC and electrical, and just kind of the things that we need to make the building run. And very importantly, we also included a line item to bring in the rest of the funding necessary for a fire sprinkler suppression system. So in all, I really hope that we receive positive information back. It's going to take a couple months for them to look over all the applications. I think it's sometime in late, I shouldn't say sometime. I think it is in late summer. But if we were awarded this grant, we would receive funding starting in December, and it's written into the plan that we would utilize the funds within 2 years. So we'd start in December 2023 and utilize these funds through November 2025. And so I will send everyone, I sent you a pretty finalized draft, but I will send everyone the final draft with all the attachments in case you have questions. There were, the standard forms and stuff that the governmental agencies require, but overall, it doesn't look much different from what you received in your packets. Questions?
Brant, did you have your hand raised?
I did. Erin, my question is this your first $1 million grant that you've applied for?
This is my first $1 million grant. Yeah.
Well, congratulations, and thank you so much, and Drew too. What an accomplishment.
No, it feels good to be done with it, and I sincerely appreciate. If I really need to stress this, Drew Cooper was an instrumental part in getting this written, and Jim and Brant and Damien and Dave from the DRC, meeting and talking through these big proposals is incredibly important. And so I am thrilled that we were able to pull it off 3 days before the actual grant deadline. So good job, team.
Way to go.
Yeah, it
And
looks,
Jim Sayers is so integral too. So all y'all, thanks so much.
yeah, it looks good. Well, hope it goes through.
I would just like to say that if it doesn't go through, I would like to see who they did take, because this is a phenomenal piece of work and we met every criteria. Drew and Erin really hammered this one. So all the other grants, I felt like, well, if we get it, we get it. But this one is like, we need to get this. They did a great job. So
Yeah, I'm very hopeful. It looked great all the way through. Thank you.
The presentation is certainly appealing. So.
yep.
Thank you all.
All right, the next thing is number 3, discussion and vote on sponsoring the Blanding Bears Ears Marathon. I did follow up on the conversation that we had about the marathon, and the 2 points that were pretty strongly made from all of us were, can we have Bluff in the name, Bluff to, or Blanding to Bluff Marathon, and then on the transports between the start and ending places. So today, David Johnson got back with me, and the narrative and the bylines do say from Blanding to Bluff, but because of the length of the phraseology, let's see, Blanding Bears Ears Marathon, adding Bluff in there, they felt was just too much this year. And I think it's fine as long as it's really clear. I think the bigger point is that transportation to and from. And so David is checking with San Juan School District because that's who's providing the buses. So rather than just having them in one, rather than having them at the end to take them back up to Blanding, it would be transporting people from here that stay here up to Blanding. So when they run back, and I pointed out to David, having run marathons, it's highly improbable to me that I would want to run 26.2 miles, back, get on a bus, be tired, sweaty, exhausted, get in my car, and then drive all the way back to lodging. That really doesn't make sense for most folks. So he's working on getting that clarified if we can have them at both ends. So with that in mind, are we
They
willing?
commit to next year for a name change, or were they just kind of blowing you off?
No, I don't think they were blowing us off. I think it was, my sense of it is we came in, they brought us in at the last moment and didn't really think
Well,
about
they kind of had to.
Well, and it's replacing the Huff to Bluff, which was their marathon that they ended up here. So
yeah. So I think that next year, those of us who want to work on it could work on it. And so what's everybody want to do? Does anybody want to make a motion?
What does it mean for sponsoring? Like, what kind of responsibility? Just what you talked about. They don't want any funding or.
No request for funding, just no request for specific volunteers. I'm sure they'll throw out asking for volunteers, but there's no request at this point for any kind of funding or commitment, just that we're willing to sponsor it and that we're willing to have the end point somewhere between the fort and the CCC.
I can make a motion that we sponsor the, Blanding Bears Ears Marathon ending in Bluff.
Is there a second?
Could we put a rider on that? Is that okay if we specify that we want to see that bus from Bluff to the beginning of the race? But I would second that if that can be a rider on your motion.
Mayor,
Is that
I
okay?
voted yes with that rider that Jim has. So however you got to do to get that on there, you'll get my vote.
So with the qualifier that the bus be available at both ends, all
Yeah.
in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, it's unanimous. Number 4, the update on the Easter egg hunt last Saturday. It was very successful. When I got there at like 10 minutes, 15 minutes before it was to start, there was the Fort volunteers and myself, and I was kind of, uh-oh, did we not get enough advertising out? But right as the time frame came in, the kids swooped in and with their parents and caretakers, and it was fun and crazy. And it was really fun watching the littlest ones because it's like they pick up the first egg and then forget there were more eggs in the area. And so the older the kids, the more they got grabbed up quickly. But the little ones were like, oh, I've got an egg. A lot of Fort volunteers. It was great. It was a really good event. So I've been meaning to thank them for putting that on.
Thank you, them. Yes, very much.
Then number 5, the financial report. The only thing that we need to talk about is I had requested holding off on paying the Helgerson property management bill for the cattle guard. And it wasn't the labor that was my concern. It was the equipment rental. I've had a discussion with Steve Helgerson about that. And I think there are other ways that we can do in the future, other ways that we can do equipment rental and or use and have it not be a charge that's not told to us ahead of time from the person who owns the equipment. It's not quantified by the hour, and then we just get hit with a very high bill, which was $800 for the rental. So I would like to make a motion that we pay the bill and look at other alternatives in the future.
I'll second that and add that I'd like to have how much a standard charge per hour per equipment from these people are. It's something that's really standard in the in the construction business. How much a backhoe costs an hour, how much a trencher, that sort of thing. So we could request, those proposals later. Just something to think about.
And just so the project was to fix that cattle guard, which was letting cattle out onto the highway, which was our responsibility. So we needed to get it done. We did have that equipment in town, and they were able to go without transporting equipment from some other town or someplace else. So that saved some money there too. But besides just cleaning the cattle guard out, I want to make sure everybody realizes that there was also some grading done there that had been that needed done in order to prevent it having to happen every year. So that cattle guard shouldn't fill up again as long as that grading stays properly done. So they graded that out, made it drain around the end of it because that road drains straight down and dumps all the sand right into the cattle guard. So that amount of money for that equipment was the backhoe plus the grading and all the rest. So it was more than just picking that up so that we could prevent having to do it again next year and the next year and the next year. So there was a little more to it. It's more than what you can just do with a little tractor. It takes some equipment. It takes somebody that knows how to do it.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Then under new business, Lou's already touched on the fact that Sandy Maillard has taken over the building that was the Turquoise and fill in the blank and is now the new restaurant in town. There are 2 generators in those buildings. One is humongous. One is what I would say large. And she has donated them to the town. I have the manuals. I put them in the file room, along with a photo I took of the plate that's on the outside of each of the generators that tells us where they're manufactured and what the model numbers are. I know nothing about this kind of equipment. I don't know how hard it's going to be for us to get it out. I don't know what I'm talking about, quite frankly. So is there someone on the council who knows something about generators that could pick up those model numbers and make the call? It's a company in Minneapolis that made these, and then figure out how do we actually pull them out of the building? Sandy thought at first she might have to tear down one of the buildings to do it, but it looks like it'll come out through the door. But there's all kinds of other apparatus that goes with it. So is there someone that can do this? It's not going to be me because I know zero about a generator.
So I wonder, what about the DRC group, like Damien and those guys that are, it seems like it could be a good functional unit over there, but talk about equipment, we're going to definitely need something to move that. But it needs to be at a place that's going to be a central.
Right.
I've got a question, Mayor.
Yeah.
What are we going to use them for? And then
Well, that's-
the next question is, do we need them? You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm going.
Okay, so that is a fair question. In the until I listened to Erin struggle, not she's struggling, that website today's struggle has frozen up my brain. In the hazardous mitigation, flooding, hurricane, tornado thing that we've been working with the county on, it was a strong recommendation by the consultant that the county hired to write this countywide plan that we're dipping into, that every community should have a generator for power backup, and that they listed grants and that kind of thing. Well, these are being given to us. So those would be the use. It's emergency kind of use, which is why someone who knows something about a generator needs to look at them, because to me, they're just taking a big chunk of space up and they're a big metal thing and I don't know what to do with it. And so the question is, are they operational? They've been sitting. How do we gauge the value of moving it versus the cost of moving it? But I think the need is there, Brant.
I think Jim Hook's the guy to ask that question. He has his hand up. Let's see what he's got to say about this.
Jim? If you have your hand up, you're muted.
I think I'm not now.
Okay.
I tried to buy that generator from the Boots 15 years ago. It's an incredible machine. Bob Boot thought with the Y2K that nobody in the county would be able to pump gas except him with that generator. It's run with propane, which means it's ready to go. And all you got to do is hook some propane to it. I wanted it to be at the fire station so we could charge all our batteries and our radios and hook the whole emergency services to it. If we can get that thing, it's got to be good. So anyway, it's a great machine, and if we can get it, I'd be happy.
You know, that kind of answers your question, Brant. Maybe the thing is we get some kind of idea how to get it out of there, and the town donates it to the fire department and have them use it for what it is. And then we have that small one that we can keep or not. But
And we'll move it once from where it is to where it goes, you know?
Right.
So it'd be great to get Jim on that committee.
So Jim, it sounds like you know exactly what it's. Yeah, exactly what it is. If you could take a look at it and then let us know, and I think donating it to the fire department's the perfect thing.
Well,
Would it then belong to the county?
Not if we donate it to the volunteer fire department. I don't think. I think that's worth checking, but I don't think so. We've donated other stuff to the department.
that's great. I'll look at it and get back to you, council. And that'd be a dream come true for me, even if we have to stick a little shed on the side of the fire station just so it has a place to live. Thanks for asking.
Yep. Well, I think that's a great use for it. A nice regular use, and hopefully we'll never see an emergency.
And then we'll figure out that second one, you know, it might need to go to the CCC or something, you know, we'll see.
Okay.
But we got two in play, and that's wonderful.
All right, then the last is the discussion of land use changes and the need for a joint work session. Both Erin and I had listened to some of the summaries, and there's a lot of changes coming down the road for us. Immediate changes and then some that are further out, but they are going to require some rewrite of ordinances and some understanding by not just planning and zoning, but us. And I would propose that we throw some dates out for the month of May to planning and zoning and to Chris McEnany. And we just block a half a day and walk through the changes that affect us and how we're going to implement them and what attorney's fees we're going to need to accrue. And then rather than me just talking to Chris and coming back and regurgitating it and then having to go back with questions, I think this is a big enough number of changes that it really would make it worthwhile for all of us to get together in one meeting and deal with this. Lou?
The recording when I last checked wasn't up yet, and I didn't scan through all the slides, but a lot of times these new changes apply to cities. Is that not the case this time? These are, no matter how big you are, it's everybody.
Yeah. Some of them, I skimmed through while they were doing the presentation. There are some that don't apply to us, but there are some that apply to fifth class and towns. And the big one that I'm thinking of applies to all of us. So it's, yeah, it is getting more and more difficult for the league to hold off unfunded mandates from the legislature. That's just the way it is. So could we look at some dates, or do you want to think about it and talk about it next week? And I can run it by planning and zoning and say what would work for you in May?
I'm going to be good in May, but June I will be gone some, Mayor. Just a little FYI, I'm going to be gone. I don't know my exact June dates, but I'll be here in May.
I'll be around in May.
Well, I will be. So knowing that June is the crunch time for the budget, the final crunch time, I think we should do it in May. And what I can do is I'll just talk to Chris and come back with a couple dates next week, and I'll run it by planning and zoning through Amanda and see if there's something there that stands out. The other question, no, go ahead, Lou.
I'm sorry, I just was going to say May 10th is a Wednesday that's not a planning and zoning meeting, but they kind of have their Wednesday evenings free. I don't know. It's going to be a little tricky to get them during the day, and I think we need to respect Chris's time and try to do a daytime meeting with him. But Wednesday, May 10th looks pretty good.
I think what I was going to say was I think it's going to need to be during the day, and if we don't want to usurp people's weekends mornings, then I think it's going to have to be during the day and try to structure it so that as many of us can be there. So I'll look at May 10th with Amanda, and I'll talk to Chris too.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'll be in Denver then.
Okay.
So when's good for you, Linda?
The first part of May I'll be in Denver. I don't, but for sure around the 10th.
So I'll talk to Amanda and see what we can figure out.
The 3rd is the Wednesday before that. Daytime, and then they're meeting that night. I don't know. Anyway, see what their availability is.
I will. All right. Then I don't have any other. Does anybody have any other?
I did. I just wanted just to let everybody know that I did that interview for the grant that we were going to apply for through the Canyon Country Discovery Center with Dave Bastian. He put in the grant application to fund a group of his workers that he's training up for all the jobs, to get them out. And it's mostly Indigenous kids that work on his crew. So he applied for this grant in order to come down and do some more of the giant cane eradication. So we did the interview last night with them, and we'll see. I wasn't too encouraged by the interview, but you never know. I didn't hear the rest of the interviews. They just pulled us in for our section, but it went well on our end, but couldn't get a lot of feedback. So we'll see. But that was last night.
Thanks
Then
for
we-
remembering that.
Yeah, and then we did the Carol, thank you, Carol Shook, thank you for managing the community center was last night as well. So thank you, Carol.
Yep. Does anybody else have another?
Motion to adjourn.
It's 6:45. Is there a second? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Have a good evening, everyone. The ayes have it.